Well, good morning and welcome to Elevenses. I'm Kevin Williams of Survival Skills Rider Training, and I'll be giving you a rundown on some of the latest news. We've got some bikes for you today and some other stuff as well. A Scottish MP has been charged with dangerous driving after a crash involving a motorcyclist. A Nigerian dispatch rider took his work home with him and ended up in jail. Two new commuter options from Zero and BMW you might like to look at. And Suzuki's new GSX S950. It's a big bike, but it's aimed at new A2 riders, and I'll explain why. And then today's better biking tip. As the weather is due to warm up for the weekend at last, we'll have a look at dehydration, and we'll ask whether it's a problem on the bike, and we'll come up with some solutions to it as well, how to look out for it as well. Clive and Sue have both looked in. Good morning to both of you. Great to see you. So settle yourselves down, everybody, for the next 30 minutes or so while we take you through the news and views. And don't forget, if you have any comments, I'm more than happy to listen to those. Any questions, I'll try and answer them. If you've got any feedback or anything you'd like me to cover on a show, I'm more than happy to try to do that for you. Right, so on with the first bit of news, first item, before I go on to news actually, there were several people out there who wanted to watch my recent Science of Being Seen presentation, which you may recall was Wednesday last week at 8 p.m. But I'd actually set the schedule for that before I checked the Euros, and of course we all know what happened that evening, don't we? So I know some people were watching the England semi-final. So I will be reprising the live presentation. It'll go up again on August the 4th, which is another Wednesday, and it will be again at 8 o'clock, and hopefully that won't clash with anything that's liable to drag your interest away from survival skills. Don't forget, the presentation was actually used as the third module by biker down teams across the UK until last year when everything shut down. And you've got the chance here to see the full and updated version. Big thank you to everybody who did look in last week. And the response was pretty positive, actually, although predictably the one person who thought there was nothing new and nothing he didn't already know in the presentation actually put his comments up in a public bike forum rather than come to me with it, which was slightly disappointing, but anyway, hey ho. The fact is, actually, one of the things he said, that there were no suggestions on how to overcome the problems. And in fact, actually, I got a similar piece of feedback many years ago when it was quite an early presentation for Kent Fire and Rescue, actually, down in Ashford, and I took that criticism on board. And one of the things I have done is I have significantly expanded the what you can do section, and hopefully also emphasized its importance. So there's now information on why it's important to select high vis with thinking about the background against which you'll be riding. There's also information about changing lights for either a different color or by using a different arrangement. There's information about the ghost reflective jacket for use at night. And there's also information about some proactive responses, why changing speed's important, and what you can do to change direction as well. And it's all based on scientific research. It's not on guesswork. So I'm not sure how he missed all that. It makes up the final third of the presentation. Perhaps he just tuned back into the football. I don't know. Anyway, Sue said, extremely interesting and informative, fascinating stuff, and that she was very grateful to have the opportunity to watch. So thank you for that feedback, Sue. That's great. If you do want to sign up for the next show, which I said would be Wednesday the 4th, there's a small charge for these, £5, and all that money goes back into hosting and researching and writing about the topic. So here's the link if you want it. And Guy's also said good morning, so welcome on board. Right, okay. So on with the news. The first thing is a story is that the Western Isles MP Angus McNeil will stand trial accused of causing serious injury to a teenage motorcyclist by driving dangerously and causing a collision outside the local community school in Castle Bay, which is the main settlement on the Isle of Barra, which is where he lives. He's accused of causing this injury whilst failing to keep a proper lookout whilst performing a manoeuvre. There's very little information about the crash, actually, which suggests that the newspapers are keeping any speculation to themselves. But what we do know is the crash happened back in October, Friday the 30th, about 7 o'clock in the evening, and in the collision with the Ford Focus driven by the MP, the rider, then aged 17, sustained a broken leg. The 50-year-old SNP politician lives on the island, but he wasn't actually present at Lochmaddy Sheriff's Court when his case was called on Monday. Instead, the sheriff heard an MP had submitted a letter via his solicitors pleading not guilty to the charge. He's due to appear in court for an interim hearing in September, and then the trial will go ahead the following month. Okay, in another case that ended up involving the police, somebody called Emmanuel Samuel finished his first day's work as a dispatch rider in Nigeria by taking his work home with him. Unfortunately, he was supposed to have returned to the motorcycle at the end of the shift. Now, subsequently to that, all efforts to reach Mr. Samuel failed, as his mobile phone had apparently been disconnected, and he apparently had two guarantors as well, both of whom had also gone incommunicado. And remarkably, the tracking device fitted to the machine was also not locating it. So perhaps not surprisingly, the boss asked the general public to help trace the missing bike, but 3 days later, Samuel fell foul of the Ogun State Police. He was stopped during a routine patrol, and officers noticed a discrepancy in his documents. They were actually dated for the following day. So he was arrested and taken to the police station for interrogation, and he confessed at that point that the bike had actually been taken from that dispatch company. He told police he had decided to run away with it. So he forged registration documents and changed the number plate for the motorcycle, and admitted he deliberately removed the tracking device too. The mistake he made, of course, was dating everything for the day after he was actually caught using the bike. So the police got in touch with the company, who confirmed that they had been looking for this suspect, and he's due to be prosecuted for the theft. So it's a slightly weird story there. Slightly less weird, Zero and BMW have both announced new models aimed at commuting riders, and both of these are electrically powered. Now I'll start with the Zero. Zero's last two models, new models, the SRF and the SRS, were both targeted very much at the top end of the market in terms of both performance and price. But the US manufacturer's latest product is definitely focused more on the commuter and entry level rider, something you may remember I talked about a couple of weeks ago as probably being the place to go with electric motorcycles. So what does the new Zero look like? Well, the answer is, if I can get the picture up on screen, it looks like this. There we go. The frame of the new Zero FXE, they have a wonderful naming system for their motorcycles. It's the same as the FX and the FXS. And the whole machine actually weighs a featherlight 135 kilograms. That's 298 pounds. And that's actually less than some petrol-engined 125s. Now, the bodywork offers what's called a completely new look, but in reality, it's not that different from many off-road bikes. It's pretty, I think, but I wouldn't say it's groundbreaking. Now, the motor it's built around is FX's 34 kilowatt motor, which is roughly 46 horsepower. The motor also has a doubled battery capacity, 7.2 kilowatts over the original 3.6, and that takes it to around 100 miles or 160 kilometers of urban riding. So what do we know about the bike? Well, peak torque is at no less than 106 Newton meters or 78 foot-pounds, which puts a lot of bigger bikes to shame. And having ridden the base model of that machine, it does actually accelerate at a pretty impressive rate. However, the lightweight battery does show its limitations as you push the speed up, because it does cut into the range. Although the bike will hit sort of an 85 mile per hour top speed, if you sustain 62 miles per hour or 100 kilometers per hour, you'll roughly halve the range. But nevertheless, that should be good enough for most commuters. By the time you've done 15 miles getting out of London, that still gives you a fair amount of distance at speed. Full recharge can be done from a standard wall socket, which means you can take it home, plug it in to your mains, and it will charge in just over 9 hours. If you buy an extra charging unit, which you excuse me, plug into a different circuit, you can halve that time, get it down to about 4.5 hours. And for peace of mind, the battery comes with an unlimited mileage 5-year warranty too. Now, the FXE has launched, will launch in the US with a price tag of $11,795. And if you convert that to sterling, you get to around £8,500 at the current exchange rates. My guess is it's likely to hit the showrooms at probably round about the 10k mark. You never get a straight dollar-pound conversion. Now, remember, there is a plug-in grant available of 20% of the cost price, up to a maximum of £1,500. So you would get the £1,500 grant, and that would bring the price down to £8,500. Now, I know a lot of people will still be saying that's expensive for an electric motorcycle, but think about this. Honda's NC750X with the DCT automatic gearbox. Remember, the electric motorcycles are simply twist and go, so the DCT is a direct equivalent there. It'll set you back around £7,500. So you've got £1,000 worth of petrol to put in it before you catch up with the Zero's price. But if you want the Honda XADV, whatever that's meant to be pronounced, the adventure scooter, which is built on the same NC750 platform, that will weigh in at just under £1,100. So all of a sudden, the Zero doesn't actually sound anything like so expensive. And my second electric machine of the day is BMW's latest electric scooter, the CEO4, and that'll actually cost £11,700 when it arrives at the start of 2022. So once again, you get the £1,500 plug-in grant, so that'll drop it down to £10,200, but that's still quite a chunk more expensive than the Zero we've just talked about. Let's have a look at the BMW. It is a if I can get the picture up on screen again, there we go. It's described as a futuristic looking machine, but to me, you're looking at a fairly standard maxi scooter, but one with an exceptionally long wheelbase. I have no idea why that is, unless it's simply to accommodate the battery and the powertrain under the seat, with squared off styling. And frankly, it looks like it's been styled with a bread knife, along the lines of 1980s cars, which some of you may remember. They weren't the prettiest design, and I honestly don't think this is actually very pretty either. So what are the figures for the bike? Well, 41.4 brake horsepower, so that's quite a bit down on the Zero. 45.7 pound-feet of torque, so again, that is down on the Zero by quite a chunk. Top speed of 75 miles per hour and a range of just over 80 miles. So once again, actually, all the figures are somewhat down on the Zero. Both bikes can eke out their range with regenerative engine braking. If there is a plus point for the BMW, it's the charging time. You can go from 0 to 100 on it in 4 hours 20 with the standard charger, or if you get a fast charger, which is optional, you can go from 20 to 80% in 45 minutes, which is kind of a lunch break, really. You will also get the conventional scooter storage with compartments at the side and front. There are optional panniers, and you get the obligatory USB-C charging port for your phone. Obviously the Zero comes without any of the storage, but I think it does get the USB port. One thing that you do get with the BMW is a truly enormous 10.25 TFT dash, which is actually bigger than my mini laptop screen. So that comes with integrated map navigation, full smartphone connectivity, etc. You also get a reverse gear, which may sound like a gimmick, but the bike actually weighs in a claimed 231 kilograms, which is roughly 500 pounds. So it's pretty weighty. I'm not sure why it's so much heavier than the Zero. So if you have peltic nose into the curb, down a camber in a tight parking bay, the reverse gear might actually come in useful. Battery warranty, 5 years, 40,000 kilometers, which is not that generous, actually. You do get a free replacement if the capacity falls below 80% in that time, but I would hope, quite frankly, that it would go a lot longer than that. Okay, so back in the world of real internal combustion engines, coming to Europe in August this year as a 2022 model is the new GSX S950. What is it about numbering schemes and the things which get so complicated? This is the wee beastie. If I can get that up on screen, there we go. It's pretty much the same as the recently launched GSX S1000. In fact, it's visually almost identical on the outside. The difference is that it's slightly lower spec when you look at it. You get Kiko brake calipers instead of Brembos, and you get non-adjustable KYB front forks as opposed to the fully adjustable gold KYBs on the 1000. So that is the outward difference. What's the inward difference? Well, it's in the power output. The GSX S950 pumps out 95 PS at 7,800 RPM, hence the name, and you get 92 Newton meters of torque at 6,500 RPM. Now, by comparison, the GSX S1000 produces 152 horsepower, so up by 50%. At 11,000 RPM and a bit more torque, 106.6 Newton meters, but rather higher up the rev counter at 9250. Okay, what's that all about then? Why build two bikes that are basically the same, but one that has less power? The answer is that although Suzuki say it's intended for new riders or older riders returning to the sport and to make it easier to manage, which tends to imply that 150 horsepower is a handful. They also say that the less powerful motorcycle has lower insurance premiums, although I suspect that's very much dependent on where you live. But there's a real reason that the 950 is detuned so much, and the sole purpose really is to target Europe's tiered license system. The bike can be restricted to meet the A2 license requirements. So Suzuki say the restriction is switchable. So once the A2 license holder has passed their full A test, they can upgrade their existing bike without having to buy a new motorcycle. Okay. But at first sight, that 95 PS figure is a bit of a puzzle because it doesn't quite appear to meet the licensing restrictions for an A2 motorcycle. So this is how it works. It's a little complicated, but bear with me. The EU and the UK, nothing's going to change after Brexit, measure motorcycle output in kilowatts. On an A2 license, you can't ride a bike producing more than 35 kilowatts. Here in the UK, we usually talk about our own homegrown unit, which of course is brake horsepower, BHP, or just HP for short. It was actually based on the lifting power of an average pit pony. Now, 35 kilowatts translates to 46.6 horsepower. That's the easy bit. Now, the rules allow for more powerful machines to be restricted to meet that 35 kilowatt limit, but the machine cannot be restricted by more than 50%. So this means that the most powerful bike you're able to restrict down to 35 kilowatts is a 70 kilowatt motorcycle. That's easy. And that translates to 93.2 brake horsepower, not 95. And this is where you have to understand the difference between BHP and PS. The Japanese manufacturers' units actually matter. PS and HP are not quite the same thing. PS is actually another European unit. It was originally German and it stands for Pferdestärke, which means, guess what? Horsepower in German. So 1 PS is 98.6% of 1 BHP. So German pit ponies were obviously a little bit less powerful than British ones. When you do that calculation, you find 95 PS equals 93.7 horsepower. The figures still don't quite match, but I guess the 95 PS claim is probably rounded up from 94.5, which would actually be bang on the 70 kilowatt limit, but obviously 94.5 wouldn't look quite so good plastered on the side of the bike. Back to the machine. It's due next month as a 2022 model. The big distinction is the, if I can get, again, I've got a picture which is not refusing to play at the moment. Here we go. The big distinction is actually the graphic on the side panel, which will tell you what you're riding. It's a fairly wallet crunching £11,000, which I suspect will put it out of the reach of a lot of A2 license holders who might be looking for a bike on a budget. However, I suppose if you're coming to riding late, it might be attractive. Certainly looks like a big bike. Of the two Suzukis, my guess is, ironically, the 950 will actually be the better road bike than the 1000. You're probably asking why, since it's got 50 odd % less horsepower. Well, the answer is actually the monster torque figure. It falls right in the middle of the bike's rev range rather than up towards the top end of it. So it's at 6,500 RPM as opposed to 9,000 plus, and it's unlikely you'll miss the missing 15 Newton meters. But what you will almost certainly feel is the difference when you twist the throttle. You will get that response instantaneously right down in the mid-range. So in a cruising gear, that I suspect the 950 will pull a lot harder than the 1000. Sadly, I think that means that it'll probably be overlooked because of the difference in horsepower. Many experienced riders will want to go for the 1000 with its 150 horsepower, completely forgetting that in fact it's not power that pushes you along when you're accelerating, it's actually the torque figure. The other thing, of course, that will put people off is it's being sold as a returning rider and learner bike. Final point, really, the restriction on some bikes is a simple throttle stop that prevents the rider winding the twist grip past the point of 47 horsepower. Those are usually fairly easy to bypass, and in others, this one I believe is this kind of restriction. It's electronic, and basically you just get a little plug into a socket. It's very convenient for training schools because they can basically switch their machines from an A2 compliant bike to a full A machine in seconds. But there's clearly a risk that some riders will be tempted to release the power of their machine prematurely. Possibly what will happen is that Suzuki will sell a second plug unit, but you'll have to produce your full license to take it away or something. I don't know. I'm speculating. Right. Paul has also looked in. Sue has also stepped in and asked, "What's the pointy bit at the front?" Well, it's the beak. If we go back to the photograph of the Zero, if I can find it again, where is it? Wouldn't you believe it? Bloody Picasso's jumped up now. Hang on a minute. There we go to the Zero. Right, just put that back up on screen. Yeah, what you'll see is it's actually the front mudguard. It's a sort of high level mudguard that is fitted to off-road bikes, and the adventure bikes have also got them like that. Personally, I'd rather have a conventional mudguard around the wheel where it's actually going to do something useful. But hey ho, styling is all in this day and age, and that's what people seem to like. Nick has said good morning. Paul said good morning. And Sue has also mentioned when they bring the charge time down to something like it takes to fill up with petrol, I might consider it. Well, yeah, the BMW there just mentioned charges 60% of the capacity in 45 minutes, which is basically a cup of tea and a pee stop. So, you know, by the time you've done 100 miles or something on a bike, you're probably ready for a break. So yes, I you know, there is still a problem there. Technology is coming on batteries, which allows them to be a lot more fast charged, but it's not quite there yet. Don't forget, you can catch the show every Wednesday and every Sunday at 11. Normally live. I will be running a recorded show in a couple of weeks' time, as I have another commitment, but generally you will catch me live. So that actually, the point about stopping and recharging brings me neatly onto my final point of the day, which is my sort of better biking tip. Now, Thursday evening was a pleasantly warm evening out on the bike. The temperature was sort of 22 or thereabouts. But last summer, we had a number of days where it topped 30 Celsius on several occasions when I was out training. And unfortunately, on at least one of those occasions, I actually failed to follow my own advice to take with me some water and then to actually drink some. So by the time I got home, which was about 5 hours after I'd set off for the training course, I have to admit I was actually somewhat dehydrated. Now, how much water do we have to lose from our bodies to start suffering dehydration? Well, the answer is just 2%. Don't forget, we are mostly water. So what are the symptoms of dehydration? Well, apart from thirst, in roughly the order you'll start to suffer them, it's a dry mouth, headache, fatigue, dizziness, muscle cramps, impaired memory, and concentration. I'm tripping over my own tongue today. I don't know why. One of the problems that riders have is having to strip off a lot of kit to go to the loo. So one of the things that people continually say is that they don't like drinking while they're riding the bike because they actually have to stop to find a toilet. But it's really important not to underestimate how fast dehydration can set in when the weather is warm, and not to underestimate the effects either. If you're dehydrated, your brain very quickly stops performing at 100%. And it's surprisingly easy to become dehydrated on a motorcycle as well, because we are sat in a wind blast which is carrying moisture away from our body, so we're constantly being dried off, particularly if we have kit which allows sweat to pass through it easily. Now, you probably know that breathable membranes are designed to do just that. Perforated leathers, of course, also are there to carry moisture away to the outside world and keep our temperature down. But what we forget is that nice cooling breeze is working by evaporating sweat, and we are steadily losing water in the body. So the cooler and more effective our riding kit, the more it will dehydrate us as we ride. How much fluid we lose isn't consistent. There are certain factors which will change. Somebody who perspires heavily will obviously lose more sweat than somebody who doesn't. They will need to drink more, but there are also various medical conditions such as diabetes or heart disease, which also means we need to drink more water. Older adults are also at higher risk of dehydration, and we may not even feel thirsty actually when we are actually dehydrated. And some medications can also act as diuretics, which of course causes you to pee and voids liquids to the outside world. Now, if you're dehydrated, you don't sweat eventually, and then your body temperature climbs rapidly, and then you get into the realms of thermal shock, which is seriously bad news. So we really do need to keep an eye on hydration. Quite simply, if you are thirsty, you are already dehydrated. It really is as simple as that. So it's a good idea to sort of preload with a bit of fluid before you go out to ride. If you do a loose stop and your pee is dark yellow, then that's also a sign. It should be almost clear or a pale straw color. So how do you stay hydrated? Well, carry some water or some fruit juice to drink. It's amazingly tempting not to stop when you're on a bike, and the inconvenience of going into a store of some sort and buying a bottle of water is always a deterrent. If you're really keen, you can do something like carry a CamelBak, but they are not cheap. It's far cheaper just to throw a bottle in a tank bag before you go. But do drink from the bottle before you feel thirsty. Water is fine. You don't need expensive isotonic fluids, but do avoid alcohol. So tea's okay, but coffee is best avoided because it does contain a lot of caffeine. Tea does contain caffeine, but not nearly as much as a coffee. Sugary drinks are also not ideal because they're packed full of caffeine and calories rather, and the energy drinks that you see, like I won't name the names, but you know what ones I'm talking about, they're full of sugar and they're full of caffeine, sometimes as much as 5 coffees. So really, if you are thirsty, an energy drink is absolutely the last thing you should be playing with. It's worth remembering, if you're a bike trainer as well, like I am, that keeping the trainee topped up is a good idea. I started suffering headaches actually in the first year that I was a bike trainer, and it took me a while to realize that it was at least partly down to dehydration, as well as the stress of actually riding with a trainee or two in front of me. Anything else to worry about? Well, try to avoid salty processed foods. Crisps obviously packed with salt, but the biker's breakfast of bacon, black pudding and sausage should also be off the menu because again it's processed and salty. Ideally, if you need food, something like a fruit salad would be ideal. Bananas, oranges are also full of water, and then when you get home, you can grab another glass of water just to start rehydrating yourself. And this is where the link to the previous story actually in Sue's question comes in, because obviously if you're doing a long journey, it's actually quite important to factor in some time to get the kit off and rehydrate and refuel. You'll probably need a pee as well. So that's the time you could be using to recharge your electric motorcycle. Dehydration is something we don't really appreciate here in the UK, but you know, it does hit us in the summer months, and we probably aren't nearly as aware of it as we should be. Now, just to finish off the show, if you have enjoyed it, you can hop over to my coffee page and you can support me there to the price of a, well, let's say a fruit juice today, as we are avoiding coffee, and that'll help me keep producing new items to read and keep the show going on the road as well. There are something like 500 articles over on coffee from my Facebook archive, which you can read for just £3 for a month's access. And one other reminder, don't forget my training courses are also available. And again, in line with the previous topic, I do run training in the evening. And it's often a nice time at this time of year to go riding because the temperatures have dropped a bit from the peak of the day. The roads are also a bit quieter, of course, and there's absolutely no reason not to go out there and run the road element of the training course. I've been offering these evening courses for years, and I've always been a little bit surprised so few riders actually pick them up, particularly as they're quite happy to head off on an evening road ride with their buddies. Right now, we've got daylight till after 9 o'clock, so it's quite possible to start as late as 7 and still get 2 hours riding in. Now, I know some people think that 2 hours isn't much, but actually when you're training, 2 hours non-stop is pretty tough. The training I had out on Thursday, actually, I could see the last 10 minutes or so of his session, he'd run out of concentration and was starting to make mistakes. So we pulled up pretty promptly at the end of the 2 hours. And if you really do want a longer session, I can offer you a separate one on another day. Okay, so that's enough for today. It brings me to the sign off. Don't forget, we'll be back with the next show on Sunday at 11. So hopefully see you then. Don't forget, if you've got any feedback on the show, I'm more than happy to hear it. So from me, Kevin Williams, that's it for today. See you hopefully on Sunday with the next edition of Elevenses at 11 AM. Bye.